So today I'm on a small stream and I'm committing to using a dry dropper, a technique that I have not practiced as much as straight up euronymphing. So even though I might not catch as many fish today using this method, I'm gonna commit to it, I'm gonna stick with it, I'm gonna improve my craft, not only as a more versatile angler, but using this very specific approach of hopper dropper fishing or dry dropper fishing. So today I'm fishing the dry dropper on my Euro rod. It's a 10 foot for 2 weight. Using my Euro rod with this longer reach allows me to go a straight tight line from my rod tip directly to my dropper. And I can really work those small, tiny little seams and pockets that would be very challenging to cast to overhead or even using a sidearm cast with a conventional rod. So I really like the control that this Euro rig provides in these tight, brushed in conditions. That being said, this isn't an ideal setup for bigger water, but I find that the control that it affords is an advantage on a small stream such as this. That's a good fish. That's a good fish. Yeah. That's what we're at. Oh, he's gorgeous. Look at the colors on that fish. Beautiful Pennsylvania wild brown trout. Okay. I'm using my same leader. The sighter is still on there. I haven't changed any of that. I just made my tippet go straight to my dry fly. I don't know if that'll show up on camera, but it is attached to a very short tag using a perfection loop. So that dropper can slide up and down my leader. And then about, I don't know, 10 inches, 12 inches, I have my my nymph, which is a small black beadhead green weenie, one of my favorite patterns during the summer months. And this allows me to target that very shallow water where trout in a wild stream like this like to hold, especially during the summer months. There's not a lot of depth here. So the fish have to use the cover that's available to them. And in this particular stream, that cover is often along the banks, underneath or right alongside low-hanging brush, rhododendrons, hemlocks, and weeds. So this technique really allows me to target that shallow bank water where fish during these conditions like to hold. One thing when fishing a dry fly is you got to continuously dust your fly and you know, get it floating high again. And you're going to spend a little bit more time doing that than if you were just straight up nymphing. But that's part of the game. That's part of the game when using a dry fly. So I'm just using a desiccant powder to kind of bring that dry fly back to life. Oh, that's a big bit of it there. We'll get right back in there, see what happens. Very nice. Very nice. That's what we're trying to do. When we were fishing that small pocket down there, we noticed that I was having a lot of trouble floating the dry fly because the nymph was just a little too heavy with that that tungsten beadhead. Going with teeny tiny BWO Perdigon style here, and that dry fly is floating higher, and that provided me the perfect presentation to work that seam right there, and holding at the very end of that seam was that nicer fish, and I got it on the nymph. I've actually caught fish right here in this seam. By far the best fish of the day.
What a beauty.
So this is a really good spot because the stream is braided here with a small little island, and the two currents come together and they form a perfect V. I like to think of it as a triangle, right where those two currents meet, and they create a V of a seam, and that's a really good place for a fish to intercept food coming down both braids of the stream. There's not a lot of water there. It's extremely shallow. Less than 12 inches, I'm guessing. Yet, because they have the current overhead to provide cover, to provide structure, and the fact that those currents are like a conveyor belt bringing, food resources down to the trout, that's a really good spot. So don't overlook those little pieces of water like that, because often you can get a good fish out of it.
What are you doing there?
Fixing a tangle. I don't even see my fly.
There you go.
I think there's a whole bunch of these little guys in there. As I was walking out of the stream today, I was thinking, and Ralph and I were discussing that, I also really enjoy fishing a 7.5 foot glass rod with fly line in small streams. And there were times today where I would have been in an advantage with that rod because I would have been casting fly line and my cast could have been longer, closer to structure, and more accurate overall. But then there were other spots where I was fishing my 10-foot rod and my arm length away, high sticking my dry fly and nymph down through the water, and I wouldn't have had that reach with the 7.5 foot glass rod. So again, every tool has its advantages and disadvantages. There's no single rod and rig that is going to excel in every situation. And that's something that, I think we need to think about when, we start the day. Like, what tool do I have in my arsenal that is best suited for these conditions on this stream on this day? And it's still not going to be, good for every situation you come across, but it's going to be better, at some of those situations. So, you got to make a conscientious decision and roll with it and not second guess yourself and fish whatever you have in your hand as well as you possibly can that day.